Okay, good.
Robert.
Well, back, bro.
Okay. Did anyone need any questions answered before we get into the subject?
What's the subject on today?
The subject today is how do we protect our youth?
Oh, that's a good subject. I kind of did have a couple of questions. I actually checked out one of your old videos called Black Women in the Community. How society is affecting the black family, black men, black children, and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I said, it was a good class, and I remember you were saying that we already know a woman is actually a reflection of a man. So my question is this: is that if let's say you're just conscious, conscious everything. You don't have to be Nuwaupian or whatever. You're just black conscious and everything. How would you attract the sisters that are conscious enough for you, or the conscious enough for you to be attracted to?
You asked, how do you attract sisters that are conscious, basically?
Yeah.
Oh, first thing is you have to put yourself in a surrounding spot where they dwell, mainly like lectures, bookstores. Let's see, poetry sets. Just study people. And with conscious sisters, they're pretty much at different lectures and different things like that, or Shake Community Center, stuff like that, where that mentality is usually in large numbers. So that's a really good plan. It's all about surroundings. It's all about, you want a certain type of. It's like if a dude wants just a regular chicken head or a hood rat, he gonna go to the club. He gonna go to where most of them are. He gonna go to spots that's like the mall, stuff like that. And not to say the conscious are not at the mall, but a lot of times that mentality of the materialistic world, attracts a certain type of person. So it's all about putting yourself in the right positions in order to meet the right people or the right sisters. Yeah. So it's just all about surroundings and where you go. I would suggest, like, a lot of times now the lecturers, they do have a lot of sisters that have that mind frame.
Okay, well, what about schools? Like, let's say TSU or U of H?
TSU. I would say TSU. TSU really has a lot of, that's almost like another Bible Belt, to be honest with you. But they do have a lot of consciousness there, too. So you have to just be mindful. I think it just comes down to just simple conversation.
Yeah, because, me and my friends was actually, talking about it, just about having the experience of Nuwaup, over years. That's nothing about the show. I wasn't not trying to use it for that purpose, but like you said before in the show, that most sisters who come into Nuwaup has came through a male. And, we can't lie that, most of the times when they come through the mail, they came through as being mates or somebody that was trying to talk to. Because I remember a long time ago, used to say, used to be brothers on the land who used to literally use the information, to get at women. Which I don't know how most people take it. That's good, that's bad. I don't know, like, the attention of the male, if he just wants her, this may be my mate, or this is just a sister I may be with because, I'm trying to get something from her.
Oh, okay.
So my question is this: is it still wrong, to use Nuwaup, right knowledge with which level you're on, to bring sisters in, but at the same time trying to talk to them?
Well, it's a difference between being a brother of knowledge, because women are attracted to men that have knowledge of self specifically, and a guy that uses it to take advantage. That's the difference. You're supposed to use that knowledge to basically, you're bringing the knowledge and you bring it to her, and she cultivates it to the seeds and into the nation. That's your job. So when you meet sisters, your whole thing is not about impressing a woman with what you know. It's basically showing her, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm about by your words. And whether she's attracted to that or not is up to her. You know, it's not about, because a lot of things, people use the phrase diction over doctrine. They use the phrase like that because a lot of brothers did take advantage of women based upon what they knew. Whereas it should just be, well, look, this is who I am, and she'll gravitate and attach herself to you based upon what you know. No, I don't think it's wrong. You're not abusing the situation. You're not a seeker of trying to abuse women based upon knowledge. I don't get that from you. So your intention is right. If the intention is right, the action will be right.
Mm-hmm.
So no, don't look at it from that standpoint. A lot of brothers in the past have done that, but at the same time, there are brothers out there who use the information to transform, to bring a woman up to goddess, and that's our responsibility anyway. So if that's your aim and that's your intention, then they're gonna come to you regardless. So all you gotta do is be in position.
Right. Another question. Still on that type of subject, but still in a more wider sense. All right. Let's say I go to U of H, and let's say I have the degree of Christism. I study that book. I know the ins and outs. And let's say I'm talking to sisters and brothers, about the Bible. And you remember how long it took, for you when you first came down here and to most like Tony, how long it took to get certain brothers and sisters out of Christianity and into Nuwaup, or at least in a higher state of mind. So let's sit here and say I got like 30 or 40 people from TSU, they actually, listen to me and actually, read some of the stuff that your father put out a long time ago. If we ever get those many people or more, should we actually start class from the Christian point of view, like the Egyptian Church of Christ Incorporated, or will we give them straight Nuwaup but dealing with Christianity?
Well, you come in with a degree of Christism, that's steering them right to where we are anyway. When you read any of those books, like any of the books that's within that degree of Christism, it's steering them into our direction. It's steering them into Nuwaup regardless. It's basically breaking it down. It's not placating. It's not doing any of those things. It's not sidestepping. So we don't have to go into a whole class of Christianity where you can have a Christism class, but you have to direct it back to where the foundation is. That's fine. We can sit here and do that all day, but at the end of the day, it's about giving up the ghost, giving up the spook spirit belief, and they'll, if you know Christianity the way you're supposed to know it, you'll be able to break that down easily, because the whole thing is, as I always told people since I've been here, is learn to speak their language. You have to look at it as a school of thought, speak their language, meaning know the scripture. So if you can quote things to them and make them like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Yeah, and this and this and this and this and this. And they'll be open. Once you have them open, then you can feed that brain whatever you need to feed that brain. And they'll be able to differentiate between that and realize that, look, this is right reasoning. What you've been in this whole time is nothing but, mental slavery. It's time to get away from that. It's time to get away from worshiping spooks and spirits. It's time to get back to worshiping the science of self. So you don't have to have a whole class on that. If you don't want to, you don't have to do that. Just be on point enough to touch Christianity and hit the quotes and get them out of it.
Right. Yeah, because I was at Brother Yusuf's place, and he actually has the degree of Christism. That's a very real book. So the brother's good enough. He lets us come over there. Take a look at any of his books. I have contributed a few books and a few dollars to the shop. Just to make sure the shop is still up and running. At least we can sit here and say we have some form of Nuwaup still here in Houston. As for like bookstore, oils and incense, it's still around.
Right.
And my next question is for like Nuwaupians and almost every other black organization in sense. I noticed that a while ago you took a picture with Brother Seti. Now last time I seen Seti on YouTube, he was debating Brother Polite about first the black community and by Dr. York, his teaching.
Yes.
And I remember on your Facebook he said he wished he never said certain things about the master teacher after the debate because I heard he and he went in hard, and the thing about it was I was kind of upset the first time, but really I was more saddened that people still believe that your father, the man who wrote 300 books, actually did these things. Now it's understandable when somebody jumps on Doc about him saying that he's he's the incarnation of angelic being or come from a different planet, and that that's been misconstrued. But I'm really surprised that people, knowing that how the system has been treating black leaders for years, people are still running with, oh well, he molested 100 children, and you only had 13 grown adults take the stand, and now he's getting 135 years. So what did Seti actually said that he wished he didn't say at the debate to you or to other people?
Let me just break it down to you exactly what happened to the fullest. Me and Janani Amun, we basically went to the lecture, listened to him do his lecture, and when he was done, he was still on stage taking pictures and doing the whole thing. So we initially approached him, and what happened was he was surrounded by three other guys or whatnot, and one of the guys was like, oh, I really don't want to get in. This ain't the time or the place for that. And me and Johnny was like, no, this is the time or place to approach you about what you said about my father. And because Johnny was like, yo, this is Dr. York's son. And I came straight up to him. I came straight up to Seti and said, yo, what's up with what you had to say about my father? Like, really? Like, what's up with that? My thing is, I want you to explain yourself to me because you had a lot of mouth. This is my perspective. Well, you had a lot to say, a lot of mouth on the lecture. Because prior to the lecture, I did investigate and realize he said a lot of things on YouTube even before the debate.
About being gay.
Right. So I'm like, okay, what's up with what you had to say? Because it wasn't just about the lecture, unless that was part of you promoting your debate with Polite. And so I asked him. I said, so what's up with what you had to say? About my father. And so he was the first thing he said was, Polite said he was going to smash me in a debate, so I had to, say that's it. But that had nothing to do with my father, and he really didn't have anything to say after that. That had nothing to do, your debate with Polite had nothing to do with my father at all. And I told him, I said, look, if you're still hung up on what my father said in the Elohim tape, you do realize my father made a tape back in 99 actually giving reference to Dr. Ben, giving him actually respect for the first to come out with the word Atum-Re when it was mispronounced as Tamara, but he like my father said, we knew where he was coming from. So he was giving him respect when he said that. So, and after that, Seti really again had nothing to say. It was just like, oh man, I wish I could take that back. I wish I shouldn't have said that, man. I shouldn't have said it. I said, all right, and that was enough for me. It's not about turning a nigga over and, taking him out back and beating him down, because that's what people want, And I said, okay, that's fine, brother, that's fine. I said, I'll tell you what, let's, I said, 'cause at the end of the day, we have a common enemy. This is small. I said, dude, that whole thing with Polite is very trivial. The debates are small. We have a common enemy. We have a common enemy against this situation, against this beast. That's what we need to be concerned about. So that at the end of the day, we all in unison agreed on that point. So I said, all right, fine. That's when we took the picture. And that was it. Right. That's why I tell people, I said, notice if you go on YouTube now, Seti hasn't said anything else about Nuwaupians since that point.
Yeah, you were saying you're absolutely right, because when you look at the whole debate, like you said, we all had a common enemy. The whole debate was, what should black people do first? I think that was the most heated part about it. And, and I'm not just siding with Polite because he's Nuwaupian. Polite just had a more better view towards me than SETI, because SETI was like black revolutionary. Let's take it to the white man. Let's do this, and to me that's all good about standing up, being men, and doing something physical. The problem is you don't have no money, you have no economic system, and there has been dozens of times blacks have risen up against the system. I mean, we could go back to the California riots and other riots. I mean, what happened? We really got our ass whoops, if you want to look at it, like the Watts riots. What was the first thing they did? They contacted the National Guard, and what happened? Blacks were still fighting, but, hey, they had us in a certain control, a certain capacity. So, I mean, the best thing for us to have is an economic system, not just for a full-scale war, but, hey, just in case something happens, we can hold our own, and we can keep defending ourselves until let's say the UN pops in, because eventually the UN is going to see America. You're not controlling your citizens. What are you actually doing to them? Mm-hmm. And like I say, it was like I said. I was glad you took a picture with SETI, but like another brother I respect too, was Tariq Nasheed. I understand why people are kind of skeptical of Doc and on what he's saying, and that's understandable because somebody needs to explain it. But it's really this year 2013. They're killing young kids at a certain age. Women are getting put in jail for 20 years for firing a warning shot. We need to understand why is this guy getting 135 years for molesting children. I mean, 31, 35. No, this was not reported on CNN. This was something local. So, right. We need to stop believing everything it was saying they hear. Like who was it? The guy who's over the Hebrew Israelites, did they hit him up with child molestation charges as well?
Yeah, Yahweh Ben Yahweh. I'm not sure I think it was Rico, I think.
Yeah, and like I said, I can't sit here and say was it true or not, but I do know this is that the Hebrew Israelites have been making is a very powerful nation in its own way. So I mean, if we know for years they've been assassinating and destroying the names of black leaders, then I can't sit here and just get mad at the Hebrew Israelite despite what I believe, because if he needed help with his teacher, I think we should support, and I think we also need to support every black organization that's having problems right now. Because like you said, we all have one common goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We all have a common goal. We all have common blood, and we all have a common enemy. Right. That is the one thing that, once you get further in consciousness, you will clearly begin to understand. That's the thing that we have to learn to understand. But I want, with that, I'm glad you went there, because that's where I'm going to go anyway with the subject matter. The biggest thing is that people have to understand this past Trayvon Martin murder is that was a precedent. They pretty much let us know that this is, it was basically a reminder that we are at war. Realize that we have been, because of being kidnapped from where we're originally from and being brought here and being released, that we're literally refugees mentally. We're not just mentally, but we're refugees physically in this country. We have no status. So they can go about doing whatever they want to us whenever they feel like it. And the biggest problem is what happened to our youth. What happened to our youth? Because Trayvon Martin, as they wanted to keep saying, he was almost an adult. He was this, he was that. He was a teenager. At the end of the day, he was our African child. He was any one of our sons, and it had to be treated that way, and it must be treated as such. We can't allow other races of people to dictate our movements anymore. Biggest thing is protection. How do we protect our youth, as well as how do we protect our elderly? Because you had a black elder, an African elder, getting shot and killed very recently as well. And these things are going on in our areas in the ghetto, wherever we are, all over the country. The first thing that, because I don't want to just keep talking about problems and not talk about solutions. First thing we have to do is, there are laws. The first thing is that they did to us, they kept us ignorant of law. And we do have rights. Because if you do remember, you go back to the Black Panthers knew the law. You know, you realize these brothers from Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, they studied law, especially Huey P. Newton. So he knew what we were able to do, what we were not able to do, especially when we, you know, as far as concealing guns and, you know, on your side, depending on, you know, the position that it is in, you're able to hold a gun. You're able to walk with one. And if you're able to walk with one, the further step, you got to realize after 1964, you know, once Jim Crow laws were pretty much abolished, they had to find a way to keep our neighborhoods contained. You know, as I say, you go back into U.S. history, you know, containment was created during the Truman era, you know, to hold down the Soviet Union. So they use the same tactics on the black neighborhoods. And the way to contain it is to use a force. You got to realize, you know, they didn't have to control us during the Jim Crow era because they were controlling us already with the Jim Crow law. They didn't need a police, and they didn't have to have a police department or police going on in the white neighborhoods. So the first thing that they had to do after the Jim Crow laws were abolished was bring in the police to literally contain us and literally prosecute us every day, daily. This happened late 60s, going on into now. Until now, if you walk through any centralized area in the United States that's a ghetto or whatever, or a slum where black people are living, you're constantly seeing police patrolling those areas. So they're policing us, they're containing us, and we have to be the ones now to protect our youth by any means necessary. You know, if that means patrolling whenever we're being stopped, or whenever there's kids that's walking the streets, they may be coming home from somewhere. It may be football practice. It may be something. We got to be able to be the ones to protect our youth, protect that teenager, protect that child, because another Trayvon Martin situation might happen again. It might happen at any given time, and we can't. The thing is, we cannot rely on the oppressor to protect us when their job is to oppress us. We can't keep going to the police for this and going to the police for that. They're just going to look at you like, we don't care. And if you know they don't care, then it makes no sense, and it's an insane thought to keep going to these individuals when they were not created to protect you. They were created to protect Europeans in their areas, away from you. So we have to be the ones to make sure that they are protected. And we have to also create a foundation where it's somewhat a centralized information place, like a think tank almost, where regardless of what black organization you're a part of, it don't matter what faction it is, that we are able to, number one, when I say protection, first thing is you have to be able to hold some type of gun with you. That's not wrong, because, again, it's open season on our race. And the first people, as men, that we have to be responsible for is our youth. You know, if we're going to keep our nation intact, we have to protect our youth. No one else is going to do it but us. That means that men have to step up now and be protectors. If we're going to have a think tank, the first thing we're going to have to start thinking about and place in that think tank is our men are going to have to step up more physically to protect our youth. Plain and simple. Because it's still kids dying, it's still kids being shot up. You know, the thing is, Trayvon Martin's situation was publicized, so we had to take a stand and we had to pay attention to that. You know, that is something that, regardless whether people want to say it was a distraction or not, I think that's very disrespectful, because you wouldn't say if that was your child, it was a distraction. If that was you, you would want people to honor your name. You know, we have to take a stand. The whole point of it now is to take a stand, you know, and this is my perspective on the whole situation. We have to take this situation, as well as my father, Dr. Malachi York's situation, to the world courts, because we can't expect a system that's oppressing us to free us. You know, you can't keep asking for these civil rights and civil rights that, when these same civil rights acts are being amended now, especially the Voting Rights Act. They're taking things out of the Voting Rights Act systematically because they know we're not paying attention to that. And Trayvon Martin's situation was not a distraction to that. They've been doing things like this for years. You know, they realized that they just had to renew the Voting Rights Act a couple of 3 or 4 years ago. So this has been a systematic plan to take away our rights. You know, that's why I agree with Tariq Nasheed when he said, look, we're going back into the Jim Crow era. And we can't have that happen to us on our watch. Again, we cannot be stuck playing checkers when everyone else is playing chess. When the human beast is playing chess against us, we're sitting around playing checkers. That is not going to work. You know, that's why, you know, we're constantly being checkmated. And checkmated means we're losing lives. And we cannot continue and afford to lose any more lives. Okay? If we take this to the world court and we are, number one, prepared to take it lawfully, which means we have our own lawyers and we have the documentation to prove that this was a human rights issue. Trayvon Martin's murder was a human rights issue, not just a civil rights issue or a black issue. We have to make it into a human rights issue. And I'm in agreement with the brother who just spoke about group economics starting to take over. That has to take over if we are really going to be revolutionary, because rallies are cool and they're fine. You know, because every rally in this, or every riot that we've had have been race related in this country. It had nothing to do with anything else but race. But we have to graduate from race and riot rallies into being completely self-governed and independent in this country as long as we're going to be here. Okay? And we can't afford to continue to put into the system. I said this before. We can't afford to put into a system that's killing our kids. That's not going to work. You know, be honest with yourself. We have to practice group economics, which means that when you get a check, you pay your bills, there is some money left. Bills and rent, you have residual income, which means that can be invested into something. You can invest that money into some type of business that's black-owned. Regardless of not whether you like that or not, black-owned businesses fail because blacks don't support it. If you support black-owned businesses, the reality is you are supporting yourself, because it's going to come back to you. You know, this might not be conducive with what you think the subject is about tonight, which is protecting our African youth, but at the same time it is. Because when we are building financially, you know, we can do what we need to do to protect our own. There'll be no reason, number one, to have lackluster lawyers in that case, because as far as I was concerned, the prosecution was doing a whack job, and we should have been able to come together as an African race and really fund them with the proper legal counsel and representation. You know, we're constantly saying we don't have the money, but we ain't got the money for that. But if you want to get expensive sneakers, you first in line 6 o'clock in the morning at the mall to buy some. So when people want to do something with some money, expensive, they're going to do it regardless. So it all comes down to number one, again, my biggest thing now is protection. My two things are protection and group economics. If you want to cripple the system, you have to boycott the system, and you have to feed within self, so that when you need something, when you need some form of, or just if we need to create something to, number one, we do need to take out of those schools. We need to take our kids out of those schools, and we need to create some form of self-defense, something that, number one, our kids are not ignorant to what's going on, because our kids are very ignorant to what's going on in this society. We got to create some type of, even if it's African-centered, or even if right now, because there are African-centered home schools, African-centered schools, that we can put our kids in that are teaching them African ways of thinking. And African ways of thinking is warrior thinking. And we have to be, again, I'm going to reiterate this one more time, as African men, we have to be able to protect our own. That's our job as protectors and providers. The first thing is protecting. You have to, even if it's patrolling with your kids, my whole thing is you are protecting them. You can't be scared of them if you know the law. Once you know the law, the cops can only do so much to you. You can't be completely scared until you feel you're just a hapless victim, because at the end of the day, we cannot be victims until we are truly learn to be gods again. The victim role gets taken away once you accept yourself as a god. So we have to accept these things, and we have to start applying what we know, because, again, these things are still going on, they're still taking place. And, again, the rallies will eventually die out, and I'm glad that a lot of people have woken up and realized that, a black life means nothing, because reality is, look it up, a black person, when you look at a black person, it really doesn't mean the skin color, it means your social status. The same thing as a white person. These are two social statuses that are two opposite ends of the pole. So that's the whole thing, is that, number one, again, you want to know what my stance on this is, we have to physically protect them. We have to physically protect them, because all knowledge in the world don't mean nothing if they're gunning for our kids. So he should have had someone with him walking home, or someone with him walking with. That mentality has to be in everybody. So, and this needs to be taught, as far as I'm concerned, all over the world, especially this country, that we as men have to start walking with our youth. If you see kids walking down the street by themselves late at night, ask them, where are your parents? Are you going home? Are you going to the store? Where are you going? Because you shouldn't be walking out here by yourself. Anything can happen to you. At least walk with them, or at least watch them from a distance, or at least come close. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to protect your own, because you want someone to protect you. We all have to be, each other's brother's keeper. We have to be able to be there for each other. If we're not going to do that, then what is the point of learning all these things and all these things that Africans were able to do to protect their families, to protect their land, and we can't protect our own families and our own land? That's a problem. So that is my stance on this. It's all about protection. Physically, we have to take on the physical protection of our youth. Again, that may mean, and I'm reiterating this again, that's going to mean to walk with black children when they're coming home, school, all these things, because again, the enemy is gunning for our kids. That means that when they brought this guilty verdict down, this not guilty verdict down, that was a precedent to not just whites and Latinos, but to every other race that, look, you can stand your ground and shoot a child and shoot a black child down, well, nothing happens to them. But yeah, I realize stand your ground law was created during the Jim Crow era, and especially during the sundown town era, where if you were not in at a certain time as a black child, they had the right to shoot you. Especially during that where that happened in Florida, that's a sundown town. And that's a sundown mentality when people are saying, well, he should have been in the house. That's a sundown town mentality that people are carrying on now. They know what time it is. They know what this country is trying to bring back on African people, because we are the undesirable race. And being the undesirable race, the system has a desire to get rid of us. And until we start to really, really wake up and realize that, because chanting only does so much if nothing materializes. You can't chant to materialize a guardian for your kid. You could chant to protect, but after chanting, you got to get your behind up and start protecting your family. That's reality.